The train screeched to a slow halt at the dusty little station, a faint cloud of smoke rising from its chimney. He stepped off, boots crunching on gravel, duffel bag over his shoulder, uniform wrinkled and weathered. The war was over, at least for him, but the echoes of gunfire and screams still rang in his ears like phantom drums. Captain Malik had been gone for 5 years, deployed across borders, through jungles and deserts, returning now not as a hero, but simply as a man searching for rest. He had imagined this moment countless times, the first glimpse of his village, the warm embrace of his wife Amina, the joyful squeal of his son Zion running into his arms, the scent of his mother's cooking wafting through the courtyard. But reality didn't match the dream. As he walked through the village path lined with acacia trees, he noticed the silence first. A few villagers glanced his way, but no one smiled, no one waved. Children stared and ran off. He saw old friends, people he'd once fought cricket matches with, now looking away as if ashamed. Was it because he looked different? Hardened? Maybe they couldn't see past the soldier he'd become. When he finally reached the tall, iron gate of his house, it was unlocked. That in itself was odd. Amina was always careful, always double-bolting it after dark. He pushed the gate open and stepped inside. The house looked the same, but lifeless. The walls, once freshly whitewashed, were cracked. Plants in the courtyard had withered. The door creaked as he entered. "Amina," he called out softly. Footsteps approached from the hallway. She appeared, but not how he remembered. Her eyes were tired, framed by dark circles. She had aged more than he expected, though only 5 years had passed. There was no smile, no tears of joy, no running into his arms. She stood still, hand on the wooden column, and said, "You're early. Not welcome home. Not even I missed you." He tried to brush it off. "The army released me earlier than expected. I wanted to surprise you." She nodded slowly, then turned around. "You should rest. Zion is at school." No hug. No warmth. He felt a strange chill settle in his chest. Later, as he explored the house, he noticed the little things, one of the family photos missing from the wall. Zion's drawings no longer on the fridge. A locked drawer in his own bedroom. The guest room was cleaned out, bed freshly made. Why? He stepped outside to find the old gardener, Fayaz, trimming the already bare hedges. "Fayaz bhai," he called cheerfully. The man turned, startled. "Malik Sahib, you're back. Good to see you. Everything all right here?" Fayaz hesitated, eyes flicking nervously toward the house. Yes, all's fine." "You sure?" A nod, too quick. "Just, you must be tired." "Rest, sir." Malik watched him walk away, limping more than he used to. That night, as the moon rose behind the neem trees, Malik sat on the rooftop, smoking in silence. The village lay before him, peaceful, yes, but unnaturally so. No distant laughter, no music, no whispers in the wind. He went to Zion's room when the boy returned from school. Zion stared at him as though looking at a stranger. He mumbled a quiet salam, then sat on the bed, fiddling with a toy truck. "Don't you remember me, Zion?" Malik asked gently. The boy nodded but didn't move closer. "You okay?" Again, a nod. Amina stood at the door, arms folded. "He just needs time." "Do you?" Malik asked, his voice tighter than before. She said nothing. In the middle of the night, he heard something, a faint sob, muffled, from somewhere in the house. He got up quietly, walking barefoot through the corridor. The sound came from the back, near the old storage room. It had always been empty, but now, it was locked. Why was it locked? He placed a hand on the wooden door. It was cold, unnaturally so. He could still hear it, not a sob now, but a shuffle. Movement. He backed away slowly, heart pounding. Maybe the war had followed him home after all. The next morning brought no warmth, no sense of homecoming. Captain Malik sat at the breakfast table, the same wooden one he had once carved his initials into with a pocketknife before leaving for war. The chair still creaked the same way, but the room felt foreign. Amina placed a plate of paratha and eggs in front of him without a word, her eyes fixed on the stove. "Where's Zion?" he asked. "Getting ready for school," she replied curtly. He took a bite, but the food tasted off. Not spoiled, just empty, as if made without care. Without memory. "You don't seem happy I'm home," he finally said. She turned to face him, arms crossed. "You were gone a long time. I was serving the country. And we were surviving. Alone." The words hit harder than any bullet. He tried to speak, but she had already turned away. Silence filled the room once more, thick and suffocating. Zion entered the room moments later, schoolbag on his back. He glanced at his father, then quickly looked away, moving straight toward the door. "Zion, wait," Malik called. The boy paused, reluctant. "I got you something." Malik pulled out a small toy soldier from his duffel bag. "You used to love these." Zion took it slowly, his face unreadable. "Thank you," he whispered, and walked out. Malik turned to Amina. "Why is he so distant? He used to follow me around like a shadow. He barely remembers you. He was 6 when you left. Now he's 11. That's not an excuse." "No," she said sharply, eyes blazing for the first time, "but abandonment is." Malik felt like the ground shifted beneath him. "I wrote letters. I sent money. I did everything I could. We needed you. Not just your salary." The words hung in the air like smoke. Malik looked down at his plate. Appetite gone. Later that day, he tried reconnecting with his old life. He visited the mosque, the corner tea stall, the barber shop. But everywhere, he was met with polite nods, forced smiles, and distance. Even his childhood friend, Kareem, now a shopkeeper, spoke only briefly. "You okay, Malik?" Kareem had asked, avoiding eye contact. "Should I not be?" Malik had replied, confused. Kareem had only shrugged. "It's just, things changed. You'll understand." That night, back at home, Malik wandered into the drawing room. The large family portrait from their wedding day was gone from the wall. In its place was a mirror, spotless, but cold. He stood before it, examining himself. His beard was thicker, his face sharper. He bore a small scar above his eyebrow, a souvenir from a mine blast in Balochistan. His eyes looked tired. Older. He wasn't the same man who had left 5 years ago. But was that why everyone felt so distant? Or was something else wrong? He walked into the hallway and stopped outside the storage room again. Still locked. He tried the handle. Still no give. He went to his bedroom, or what used to be his, and opened the wardrobe. Half his clothes were gone. His military uniform, once hung proudly, was folded into a suitcase and shoved into a corner. The closet now had unfamiliar items, a men's perfume he never used, a blue shirt that wasn't his size. He frowned. He went to Amina, who was washing dishes. "Is someone else living here?" he asked. She stiffened, but didn't look at him. "No." "Then whose shirt is in my closet?" Her hands stopped moving. For a long moment, there was no sound except the slow drip of water from the tap. Finally, she said, "You should rest, Malik. You're tired." He took a step closer. "Amina, I'm asking a question." She turned, eyes glinting with steel. "And I said you're tired." He knew then, she was hiding something. And the house, this house he had built with his own hands, had secrets buried in its walls. That night, he couldn't sleep. Zion didn't even say goodnight. Amina locked the bedroom door from her side, claiming it was habit. And the house creaked in the silence, the way old houses do when they hold in too much. But Malik wasn't imagining it. Footsteps in the hall, soft and irregular, like someone walking barefoot. Then, the sound of a door opening and closing, softly. Too softly. He stepped out into the hall, heart pounding. The storage room was still locked. But now there was a small smear of something dark just beside the handle. Blood? He touched it. Dried. Faint, but unmistakable. He looked around. Nobody. He returned to his room, sat on the bed, and stared at the door. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. And whatever it was, it had started in his absence. The third night back, Malik sat alone in the courtyard, staring at the old neem tree swaying gently in the midnight wind. The lantern above him flickered as if struggling to stay alive. Shadows danced across the wall, long and shifting. The house, once familiar, now breathed like a stranger, alive, watchful, holding its breath. He had been trained to read danger. In war zones, the smallest sound, a broken twig, a distant cough, could mean ambush. And tonight, he felt that same tension in his bones, not from enemies in uniform, but from his own home. A creak came from the hallway. He stood, slowly, without making a sound, and followed it barefoot. His fingers brushed against the cool stone wall as he moved. The corridor was dark except for the faint moonlight spilling through the wooden windows. Halfway down the hallway, something caught his eye, a smear, barely visible. He crouched down. Blood. Thin, dried, almost like it had been hastily wiped but not fully cleaned. It trailed toward the back of the house. Toward the locked storage room. His heartbeat quickened. He followed the stain, step by step, until it disappeared into the shadow just beneath the door. He tried the handle. Still locked. He knocked gently. No sound. Then louder. Still nothing. He stood there for a full minute before backing away. The next morning, he called for the house servant, Reby, an old, quiet man who had worked in the house since Malik's childhood. Reby Chacha, Malik said, showing him the stain near the door. What is this? Reby glanced once, then quickly looked away. I didn't see anything, sir. Don't lie. I clean only the kitchen and courtyard now. Amina Bibi takes care of the rest. Was anyone else in the house while I was gone? Remat's hands trembled slightly. No one permanent. What does that mean? Remat looked him in the eye for the first time. Some guests came. Not everyone stayed long. Malik narrowed his eyes. And who were they? The old man bowed his head. I'm just a servant. I don't ask questions. He left hurriedly before Malik could press further. Frustrated, Malik stepped outside for fresh air. A small group of villagers stood near the well. When they saw him approaching, their laughter died out. One of them, Perveen Baji, muttered something and quickly turned away. He walked toward them. Salam. A few muttered responses. No one met his gaze. I wanted to ask. We don't know anything, Perveen said firmly, cutting him off. I haven't even asked yet. She looked uncomfortable. Just, it's your house. Your matters. We don't interfere. Another woman added quietly, some things are better left alone. Malik stepped back, stunned. What did they know? That night, the whispering began. He was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, when he heard it. Faint voices, not conversations, but fragments. A woman's sob. A child's laugh. A name being called out. His name. Whispered. He sat up. The room was empty. He stepped out into the hallway again. This time, he followed the sound to the back of the house. The storage room was still locked, but now he noticed something else. The tiles near the door had been disturbed. One of them was slightly loose. He crouched down, lifting it carefully. Beneath the tile, a small piece of cloth. torn, soaked in dried blood. And beside it, a single child's earring. Golden. Star-shaped. Zion didn't have a sister. He placed the items carefully on a cloth and wrapped them up. In the morning, he asked Zion as casually as he could, "Did you have any cousins come to stay while I was gone?" Zion looked nervous. "No." "You sure? No girls your age?" He hesitated, then shook his head. Malik felt the frustration rising again. Everyone was hiding something. Even his son. Later that day, he walked around the house's exterior, looking for any sign of changes made in his absence. Near the rear wall, behind the old mango tree, he noticed something. The ground looked uneven. Recently dug. He fetched a small spade and knelt down. About a foot down, his spade hit wood. He uncovered what looked like a wooden box, old, rotting, covered in dirt. It wasn't large, maybe the size of a child's toy chest. He lifted the lid slowly. Inside were papers, crumpled drawings, torn letters, and a photograph. He picked it up and dusted it off. The photo showed Amina, holding a child. But not Zion. It was a little girl. Curly hair. Bright eyes. He stared, confused. There was a name scribbled on the back, Sadia. 2019. He hadn't heard that name before. And 2019, that was during his deployment. A second child? He stormed back into the house, photo in hand. "Amina," he shouted. She came out of the kitchen, startled. "What is it?" He held up the photo. "Who is this? Who is Sadia?" Her face turned pale. "Answer me." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Then, without warning, she turned and walked away, tears in her eyes. The house was no longer just strange. It had become alive. The night after finding the photo of the girl, Sadia, Malik couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, memories of war crashed into him like waves. The desert sun. The buzzing of flies over bodies. A fellow soldier screaming for help, his legs blown off. Gunfire lighting up the night like fireworks from hell. But worse than all that, was what he heard when his eyes were open. It began with the crying. Soft. Fragile. Like a little girl sobbing into a pillow. At first, he thought it was coming from outside. He opened the window and looked into the yard. Nothing. Then he realized it was coming from inside the walls. Then came the footsteps. Light, like bare feet padding across marble. Sometimes they'd start in the middle of the night and go on for hours. Doors creaked open in rooms no one had entered. Lights flickered even when there was no wind. At 3:17 a.m. exactly, his bedroom door opened by itself. He had locked it. He stood, heart pounding, and stepped out into the hallway. Everything was still, too still. He called out, "Amina?" No answer. "Zion?" Silence. Then, behind him, a giggle. He turned so fast he almost fell. But there was no one there. The corridor was empty, except for a new drawing on the wall, made with crayons. It hadn't been there earlier. A stick figure of a little girl holding hands with a woman. Beside them, a man, his head scratched out. He staggered back. "Who's doing this?" he whispered to the darkness. "What is happening to me?" In the days that followed, his grip on reality began to loosen. He'd wake up drenched in sweat, hearing whispers in languages he didn't know. He saw reflections in mirrors that didn't match his movement. Once, while brushing his teeth, the water from the tap ran red, blood red, for a full 3 seconds before turning clear again. And every time he asked Amina about Sadia, she avoided his gaze. "She's gone," was all she'd say. "Gone where?" he'd press. But she would leave the room, locking the door behind her. One evening, Malik was in Zion's room, helping him with homework, when he noticed a pile of old drawings under the bed. He pulled them out. They were of the same girl. Again and again. Curly hair, a yellow dress. Sometimes she was smiling. Other times, crying. In one picture, she was inside a box, her hands against the lid. His blood ran cold. He turned to his son. "Who is this, Zion?" Zion looked away. "Nobody. Don't lie to me. She used to play with me. But Mama said not to talk about her." "Why not?" "She made her go away." Malik froze. "Who did?" Zion looked at him. "Mama." The next morning, Malik drove to the local imam. He hadn't been to the mosque in years, not properly, but now, something inside him was unraveling. He placed the photo of Sadia on the imam's desk. "She lived in my house," Malik said. "I didn't know about her. My wife never told me. But I think something happened to her. Something terrible." The imam stared at the photo, then at Malik. "Have you spoken to the elders? Or your wife's side of the family?" "They won't say anything. Everyone acts like she never existed." The imam exhaled deeply. "Then maybe that's why she hasn't left." Malik blinked. "What do you mean?" "There are many kinds of hauntings, Captain. Some are curses. Some are guilt. But the worst ones," he tapped the photo, "are children who died without closure. Spirits who were forgotten, or buried with lies." Back at home that night, Malik sat in the storage room doorway, still locked, still stained. He spoke out loud, voice steady. "Sadia. If you're still here. I didn't know about you. But I want to. Show me what happened." A gust of cold wind swept through the hallway. The light bulb above him flickered. And from within the locked room, a sound. Not footsteps. Not crying. But scratching. Like fingernails against wood. The door had always been there, a plain wooden slab at the far end of the hallway, near the back veranda. But now, to Malik, it felt more like a wound carved into the heart of the house. He stood before it again that morning, fingertips resting against the cold wood. The dried bloodstain was still visible near the bases, faint, but real. Amina noticed him staring at it and walked over, wiping her hands on her dupatta. "Stop going near that room," she said firmly. "I live here," Malik replied, not turning to face her. "You haven't for 5 years," she snapped. He turned. "What's in there?" "Nothing that concerns you." "You're wrong. Everything in this house concerns me. You didn't tell me about Sadia. You didn't tell me about the voices, the blood, the drawings." "I said leave it alone," she shouted suddenly, voice cracking. Zion, sitting nearby with his books, looked up in fear. Malik softened his tone. "Amina, please. Just tell me the truth. Who was she?" She shook her head. "She's gone. That's all that matters now." "No," he said. "That's exactly what doesn't matter. The way no one speaks about her, like she never existed. That's not normal. That's not peace. It's hiding. And I've spent enough of my life hiding." He reached for the door handle. Still locked. Amina's voice turned cold. "The key's gone." He looked at her. "Where is it?" She didn't answer. Just turned and walked away. That evening, Malik tore through the house. He searched old drawers, behind picture frames, beneath floorboards, even in the attic. Dust coated his hands, cobwebs stuck to his hair, but he didn't stop. Something inside him had shifted, he needed answers, no matter what they cost. In the old almirah in his late father's study, he found a bundle of letters tied with a black ribbon. Most were from him, letters he had sent during the war, unopened. That stung more than he expected. But tucked beneath them was something else, a small brass key. It looked old, the kind used for traditional wooden locks. His hand trembled slightly as he held it. He walked slowly through the hallway, past the kitchen, past the still damp wall from last night's rain. The air seemed to grow heavier with each step, as if the house itself was resisting. He stopped at the door. Slipped the key into the lock. It fit. He turned it. Click. The door creaked open, slowly, as if exhaling after holding its breath for too long. The room was dark. A single barred window let in a beam of dying sunlight. Dust particles floated in the air like spirits frozen in time. It smelled stale. Like forgotten memories, sealed emotions. He stepped inside. The room was small. The wallpaper peeled in strips. A faded rug covered part of the floor. In one corner stood a child's bed, tiny, rusted, the blanket folded neatly. Beside it, a doll sat slumped in a wooden chair. One eye missing. Its fabric body torn at the neck. On the walls, crayon drawings. Dozens of them. Some were cheerful, rainbows, flowers, stick figures holding balloons. But others showed darkness. A girl crying behind bars. A woman shouting. A man with no face. One picture showed the little girl curled up in a corner, red marks around her. Malik felt dizzy. He stumbled back, hand bracing against the wall. That's when he noticed the names etched there with a knife. Sadia. Sadia was here. Sadia is not bad. Let me out. His stomach turned. This wasn't just a child's room. It was a prison. Suddenly, the air shifted. A soft giggle echoed, faint but real. He turned sharply. No one. The doll had fallen off the chair. Behind him, the door creaked again. And Amina was standing there. Her face was pale. Hollow. You shouldn't have opened it, she whispered. He stepped toward her, voice trembling. Tell me what happened. She wouldn't stop crying, Amina said, barely audible. Day and night. After Zion was born. I couldn't manage both. She wasn't even mine. Malik blinked. What? She was your brother's daughter, she said, tears now slipping from her eyes. After the accident, no one would take her. And you were gone. I tried. I really did. He stared at her in horror. You locked her in here, he whispered. She kept running outside. She'd draw on the walls. Scream in her sleep. Neighbors started talking. I thought if I just gave her time, she'd calm down. He felt like his heart was collapsing. How long, he asked. How long did you leave her here? She shook her head, sobbing. I don't know. One night, she stopped crying. I thought she had finally fallen asleep. Malik stepped back into the room, staring at the bed. The blanket folded so perfectly. How did she die? Amina didn't answer. But he already knew. The air inside the room grew colder as dusk slipped into night. The walls, once scribbled with childhood drawings, now seemed to close in like witnesses of something unspeakable. Malik stood motionless, his breath shallow, his heart beating in his throat. Amina had disappeared down the hallway after her confession. No apology. No explanation. Just silence. But Malik stayed. He needed to see everything. He needed to know the whole truth, whether he could live with it or not. He slowly scanned the room again. The doll in the corner. The worn-out rug. The bed, too small for comfort, too neat for a child who once cried herself to sleep. Then, something caught his eye. The edge of the rug near the corner was slightly curled. He bent down, pulled it back. Beneath the rug was a loose floorboard. His fingers trembled as he pried it up. The smell hit him first, a musty, metallic scent that rose from the wooden cavity. Then the sight. A uniform, folded tightly, stained with old, dried blood. The patch on the shoulder was unfamiliar. It wasn't his. He lifted it gently. The cloth was stiff in places, soaked through. And beneath the uniform, a toy. A small plastic music box, shaped like a rabbit. Its ears had broken off. He turned it over. The winding key was still intact. Without thinking, he wound it once. A haunting lullaby began to play, slow, distorted, like a broken childhood memory. He stared at it, trying to remember if he'd ever seen it in the house before. He hadn't. This wasn't Zion's. And it wasn't Sadia's either, at least, not from what he'd seen in her drawings. It belonged to someone else. His mind reeled. He checked the uniform again. Something was tucked into the front pocket, a folded piece of paper, yellow with age. He opened it carefully. It was a letter. Handwritten. The ink slightly smudged. Amina. I can't stay in this house. It isn't right what we've done. She cries every night. I can't sleep. I can't breathe. You said it would be better this way, but it's not. I dream of her face. I left the key where only you'd find it. I'm sorry. R. Malik's hands clenched the paper. R. Rayhan? His cousin? He tried to remember. Rayhan had visited them briefly in 2020. A short stay. Then he disappeared. Malik had thought he'd gone abroad for work. He stumbled back, collapsing onto the bed. His house wasn't just hiding the story of a forgotten child. It was hiding the story of another man. Another secret. Another silence. Had Rayhan found out about Sadia? Had he tried to stop it? Had something happened to him? He stood suddenly, ran to the hallway, and shouted, Amina. No answer. He searched the house, room to room, but she was gone. The front door hung slightly open, swaying in the night breeze. She had left. Coward. Hours passed. Malik sat in the locked room, the letter and uniform beside him. The toy rabbit still played faint notes every time the breeze shook it. Then, the air shifted. A thump. Soft. Behind him. He turned. In the corner, beside the doll's chair, something new. A pair of child's shoes. Small. Purple. Dirt still clinging to the soles. He hadn't seen them before. He reached out, touched them. Cold. Then the crying began again. Not from the hallway. Not from behind the door. From inside the room. Right next to him. He stood, eyes darting, but no one was there. Still, the crying grew louder. Desperate. Choking. He fell to his knees, pressing his palms to his ears. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't know. I didn't know. The room trembled slightly, or maybe it was just him. And then, it stopped. All of it. The crying. The air. The sound. Stillness. Peace, but only for a moment. From beneath the bed, something rolled toward him. He leaned down and picked it up. A photograph. This time, it was of Rayhan. Standing with Sadia. Smiling. The back read, he promised to protect her. But he failed. The next morning was thick with fog, both outside and within Malik's mind. He hadn't slept. The blood-stained uniform. The music box. The letter from R. The photo of Rayhan with Sadia. And the whispering that had kept him company all night. Amina was still gone. Malik had no idea where she'd fled, or if she'd ever return. But at that moment, he didn't care. He needed the truth. Not guesses. Not hauntings. Not half-told stories from frightened neighbors. The truth. There was only one person left in the house who had seen it all. Remat. The housekeeper had served the family for over 20 years, since Malik's own childhood. Quiet. Dutiful. Obedient. But no one could live in this house and not know what had happened within its walls. Malik found him early, sweeping the courtyard in slow, deliberate strokes, as he always did. Remat Chacha. Remat turned, surprised by Malik's sudden voice. Yes, Malik Sahib? I need to talk to you. Now. The old man hesitated. His fingers tightened around the broom. Of course. Inside. Privately. He led him to the drawing room and closed the door. Then he placed the photo of Rayhan and Sadia on the table. Next to it, the letter. Then, slowly, the blood-stained uniform. Remat didn't touch them. But Malik watched the blood drain from his face. You knew, Malik said, voice low. The old man sat down slowly, his knees trembling. For a moment, he looked like he might deny everything. But then, he spoke. I always hoped this day would never come, Remat whispered. That the dead would stay quiet. That the past would stay buried. They didn't, Malik said. Tell me what happened. Remat sighed, eyes misty. It was the winter after Zion was born. Amina had changed. She was exhausted. Cold. Angry at everything. When Rayhan brought Sadia here, your brother had just passed, and no one else would take the girl in. I didn't even know, Malik said, stunned. You were deployed. We received news late. Amina never wrote you about it. She said it would distract you. Malik clenched his fists. Sadia was quiet, Remat continued. Strange, sometimes. She'd talk to herself, draw on the walls. But she was just lonely. She'd lost her parents, and no one treated her like family. She was a child, Malik said, voice cracking. She deserved love. Remat nodded. Rayhan tried. He stayed for a while. Said he'd take her away if things didn't improve. But Amina, she wouldn't allow it. She was afraid of what people would say. That she wasn't able to raise 2 children. That she was unstable. So she locked Sadia in that room, Malik muttered. Yes. Said it was for her own safety. She told everyone, even Zion, that Sadia had gone to live with relatives. And Rayhan? Remat looked up, pain in his eyes. He found out. He came back unexpectedly one night. He heard Sadia crying from the locked room. He threatened to take her. He said if Amina didn't open the door, he'd go to the police. Malik held his breath. That night, Remat said, I heard shouting. I went to the corridor, but the door was closed. When I opened it. He trailed off. When you opened it, what did you see? Remat swallowed hard. Rayhan. On the floor. His head bleeding. Amina standing over him. Her hands shaking. She said it was an accident. He had pushed her, and she defended herself. Malik sank into a chair, numb. She told me to help her clean it. Burn the uniform. Bury the letter. She said if anyone found out, Zion would grow up without a mother. That you would never forgive her. So you helped her cover it up? Malik asked bitterly. I was afraid, Remat whispered. I'd raised you since you were a boy. I didn't want to break your family apart. And Sadia? She died days later. Starved. Sick. Alone. Amina found her in the room, quiet, curled up in the blanket. She buried her in the back, without a funeral. Malik's world tilted. He wanted to scream, to destroy something, to run outside and claw the earth open with his bare hands. But all he could do was sit and shake. She was my niece, he whispered. My own blood. Remat bowed his head. I've lived with this guilt every day. Every time I see Zion laugh, I hear Sadia's cries. Every prayer, I ask for forgiveness, but I don't know if it'll ever come. Malik stood, his legs barely supporting him. He looked down at the photo again. 2 innocent faces. 1 forgotten. I don't know what to do, he whispered. Give her peace, Rimat said softly. Give her a name again. Let the village know. Let her know she was not a mistake. Malik didn't speak. But in his heart, he knew, the silence had to end. Even if it destroyed everything else. By the window, watching the sun lower into the horizon. In his lap lay the photo of Sadia and Rayhan, now creased from being held too tightly. The letter from Rayhan was tucked into his pocket. His hands still bore dust from the backyard where he had begun clearing the forgotten patch of earth near the neem tree, where Rimat had said Sadia lay. He hadn't cried yet. He didn't know how to. But something inside him felt like it had already broken. And then, the gate creaked. He rose. Footsteps. Slow. Familiar. Amina stepped into the doorway, her dupatta drawn tight, eyes red-rimmed, face pale. She looked older, as if the years had finally caught up to her in a matter of hours. Where were you? Malik asked, voice calm. Too calm. I went to the masjid, she said. To pray. He nodded. And did you ask for forgiveness? She looked away. Because I know, he continued, walking toward her. I know everything now. Her breath caught. Who? Rimat told me, Malik said. I found Rayhan's uniform. His letter. The room. The music box. The toy. The photograph. The floorboard under the rug. The blood under the floor tiles. She closed her eyes. There's nothing left to hide. She slowly walked to the edge of the sofa and sat down, her hands trembling in her lap. Malik stood in front of her. You lied to me for years, he said. You buried a child. You hid a murder. You pretended nothing ever happened. Amina's lips quivered. I never meant to kill him. Malik flinched, not at the words, but at how casually they were spoken. Like admitting the sky was blue. He came at me, she continued, screaming. He said I was cruel. That I had locked her up like an animal. That I was unfit to be a mother. I pushed him away. He slipped. Hit his head on the table corner. It was fast. Sudden. And Sadia? Malik's voice cracked. Amina looked up at him, finally meeting his eyes. I didn't mean for her to die, she whispered. At first, it was temporary. Just to discipline her. She kept drawing those strange pictures, talking about shadows. Zion would cry when she screamed at night. I thought, if I gave her time alone, she'd calm down. Malik stared at her like he didn't recognize the woman in front of him. I brought her food, Amina said defensively. But then, one day, I forgot. And when I remembered, her voice broke. She was gone. Silence. Long. Crushing. You forgot? Malik repeated, each word like a drop of acid. She was a child. My niece. My brother's daughter. And you forgot? Tears spilled from Amina's eyes now. I was overwhelmed. I had no help. You were away. No one understood what I was going through. I was fighting a war, Amina, he roared suddenly, fists clenched. I saw blood, death, torture, but nothing ever felt this disgusting until today. Because the blood wasn't from the battlefield. He stepped closer. It was from our own home. Amina collapsed into sobs. I didn't know how to fix it. I told Rimat not to tell anyone. We buried Sadia quickly. I cleaned everything. Rayhan's disappearance was easy to explain. People assumed he went abroad. Malik sat down across from her, eyes wet but hard. And you were going to take this to your grave? I thought, if I acted normal, if I raised Zion properly, maybe I could be forgiven silently. Malik's voice dropped to a whisper. But not by her. Amina looked up, confused. I've heard her crying, he said. In the hallway. In the room. Last night, I found her shoes, and then her photograph rolled out from under the bed. I think she's still here. Amina's face went pale. I don't believe in ghosts, Malik said. But this house, it feels like it's mourning. Like she never left. Amina stood shakily. What do you want from me? Justice, he said, simply. Not punishment. Not revenge. Just truth. For whom? For Sadia. For Rayhan. For Zion, who deserves to know what kind of house he's been raised in. And for me, because I can't carry this silence anymore. Amina sank to the floor, defeated. If you tell the village, they'll never forgive me. Maybe not, Malik said. But neither has Sadia. The morning light crept slowly through the curtains, brushing against the wooden floorboards that still carried the scent of bleach and old dust. Malik sat on the edge of the bed that no longer felt like his. The house was finally quiet. No voices. No whispers. No crying behind doors. But the silence didn't bring peace. It brought a question, the same one that had been gnawing at him for days. Can you ever rebuild something when its very foundation was soaked in lies? Amina remained in the guest room. They hadn't spoken since the burial. Not truly. She moved like a ghost now, present but not alive. She barely touched her food. Her eyes never met his. She lit incense in the corners, prayed long into the night, and left her wedding bangles quietly on the table outside his door. Not once did she ask for forgiveness. Not in words. Maybe she knew it wouldn't come. Malik walked the house slowly that morning, like a man visiting the grave of a life that once was. The old family photos on the wall now looked like fiction. The dining table, once full of laughter and loud dinners, now sat untouched. Zion's laughter, Sadia's humming, Rayhan's advice, it all echoed faintly in his mind. Memories clung to these walls like vines, choking whatever new life dared to grow. And despite the repairs, despite the fresh coat of paint and scrubbed floors, the house still smelled of secrets. He stepped outside and sat under the neem tree, the same spot where Sadia had finally been laid to rest. A soft wind blew through its branches, and for the first time in weeks, he didn't feel cold. He placed his hand on the earth. I'm sorry, he whispered. I should have been here. Birds chirped somewhere in the distance. He closed his eyes and breathed deep, not just with his lungs, but with his spirit. And for a fleeting moment, he felt her. Like warmth on the wind. Not haunting him, but forgiving him. Later that day, he stood in front of the house with a single bag packed. Reby waited beside the gate. You're sure about this, Sahib? Malik nodded. This house is no longer my home. Where will you go? Anywhere peace feels real. Reby nodded slowly. Will Madam Sahiba come with you? Malik looked back once. Amina stood at the window. Her hand gently rested against the glass. Her face unreadable. She made her choices, Malik said softly. Now I make mine. The drive away was quiet. He didn't look back. Not at the fields he once helped plow. Not at the crooked fence he had painted with Rayhan as boys. Not even at the front door, the same one Sadia had run to every day when she saw him coming home from war. All of it was behind him now. Not forgotten. But released. He didn't know what the future held. He didn't have a plan. Maybe he'd live near the sea. Maybe he'd volunteer with war orphans, those like Sadia. Maybe he'd buy a quiet plot of land and build something from scratch, something honest. But wherever he went, he carried a promise. To never again fight for something that cost him his soul. The real enemy had never worn a uniform. It had never marched across borders or carried rifles. The real enemy had lived within, in secrets, in silence, in the comfort of denial. And Malik had finally defeated it. Not with force, but with truth. And now, for the first time in years, he was free. The end.